Christmas Eve has a smell. Pine, cinnamon, roasted meat, and just a hint of stress sweat from a man who's been sent to the store with a list written like a military briefing. My wife, Claire, doesn't write "by dessert." She writes, "the dessert," the one I told you about, not the other one, the good one. As if there's a dessert witness protection program, and I'm about to blow their cover. I came home with 2 overflowing bags. Red marks carved into my hands like I'd been carrying bricks, not groceries. Snow on my shoulders. Cheeks numb. Hair doing that "I fought the wind and lost" thing. The house looked like a Christmas commercial. Tree lit, garland everywhere, candles on the table, gifts lined up under the tree like they were waiting for a photo shoot. Claire stood in the kitchen in that soft sweater she only wears in December, because apparently she has seasonal clothing the way some people have seasonal allergies. She smiled when she saw the bags. That smile lasted exactly 5 seconds. She started unpacking, slowly, methodically, like a TSA agent checking luggage. Apples, bread, cheese, a bottle of wine that cost enough to justify a small prayer before opening. Then she stopped, hands hovering over the final bag. She turned her head toward me, still holding a bag of something like it had offended her personally. "Where's the dessert?" The air changed, not dramatically, not with thunder. More like someone turned the thermostat of the relationship down by 10 degrees. My stomach did the little drop, that tiny elevator fall. I blinked, already knowing the answer before my brain caught up. I checked the receipt anyway, the way you check a locked door even though you can literally see the key is missing. No dessert. I exhaled. "Oh, that." I forced a laugh. "Yeah, I forgot it." Claire stared at the counter. She didn't look at me. She didn't speak. And in that silence, my brain ran a full PowerPoint presentation titled, "Ways This Will Somehow Become Your Fault." "I can go back," I said quickly. "The store's still open. I can be in and out." Claire's fingers tightened around the plastic bag. Still no eye contact. I took a step closer. Not too close. Christmas Eve is not the time to test proximity rules. "Seriously, it's fine. It's an annoying mistake, but..." Then she spoke, softly. "You ruined Christmas for me." Her voice had tears in it. Not screaming tears, not sitcom tears. The kind of tears that say, "I'm a victim and the universe is my witness." I opened my mouth. She held up a hand like I was a defendant about to interrupt the judge. The pause after that was worse, because the tears stopped. Her face changed, and the words that came next didn't sound emotional. They sounded rehearsed. "You need to sit alone this Christmas and think about who you've become." She said it the way a doctor tells you to stop eating salt. Matter of fact, inevitable. Like this is the treatment plan and you're not here to debate. I just stood there for a second. Not because I agreed, not because I was broken, because my brain was trying to process how we got from forgot dessert to spiritual exile. "Claire," I said carefully, "it's a dessert, not a..." She cut me off again, calm as a surgeon. "This isn't about dessert." Of course it wasn't. It was never about the dessert. It was about the meaning of dessert, the symbolism, the unspoken emotional labor of pastry selection. She walked to the bedroom. I followed, staying a respectful distance like I was trailing a bear in the woods. She pulled out a suitcase. That's when I knew this wasn't an argument. This was a script. "I've been watching you," she said, folding clothes with angry precision. "You've been distracted, forgetful." "Because I forgot one thing?" I asked. She turned her head slightly, giving me the kind of look that says, "You're adorable and wrong." "No, because you've stopped holding things together." I almost laughed. Almost. Because I wanted to ask, what exactly am I holding together? A holiday? A marriage? The economy? But I didn't, because I could already tell. She was in the moral high ground phase. You cannot argue with someone who's already standing on a mountain they built out of your supposed failures. "I don't feel the holiday with you anymore," she continued. "I don't feel safe." Ah, yes. The classic Christmas threat. Unsafe vibes. She zipped the suitcase like it was sealing my fate. "This is for your own good," she said. I stared at her. "That's a bold thing to say when you're the one leaving." "It's a consequence," she replied. "A consequence. For forgetting a dessert. If I forgot the turkey, would she send me to prison?" I tried to stay calm. "Okay, you want space? Fine, but it's late. Let me drive you to your parents." She lifted her chin. "No, I need to do this alone." There it was again. That line, not angry, not dramatic, controlled, like she wanted the words to land exactly where they always land, in the part of me that still tries to be the good husband, even when the rules keep changing. "Claire," I said, "it's snowing. I'll take a taxi." "Why?" I asked, and I didn't mean why taxi. I meant why the performance. She finally looked at me. Her eyes were dry now. "You always want to control the situation," she said. "This time, you don't get to." That sentence hung between us, and in that moment, I felt something shift inside me. Not sadness, not panic, a little clarity. Because if the point was really my mistake, then a ride to her parents would be normal. If the point was control, then she needed to leave without me watching. I nodded slowly. "Okay," I said. "Go." She blinked, like she expected me to fight harder. I didn't. I just watched her put on her coat, grab her phone, and walk out of the house like she was starring in a dramatic holiday film called A Woman Who Deserves Better Than a Desertless Man. The door closed. The house stayed lit. The tree blinked like nothing happened. And I stood there in a Christmas sweater I didn't even like, holding a receipt, thinking, so this is what punishment smells like. Pine and cinnamon. I stood there for a full minute, holding the grocery receipt like it was evidence, not evidence of a crime. Evidence that reality had officially slipped into something weird. I walked into the kitchen and stared at the counter. No dessert? Somewhere in town, a lonely cheesecake was living its best life, completely unaware it had apparently saved my marriage if I'd only remembered it. I poured a glass of wine. The expensive one. The one I bought because Claire said, "This year I want it to feel special." I took a sip. It was good, which made me resent it, because it tasted like money and optimism, and both of those had just been wasted. I looked at the dinner setup. Plates, cutlery, the napkins folded like little swans. Claire's idea, because she watched one holiday video and decided we were now a family that folds birds out of fabric. I sat down anyway, not dramatically, not sad man in an empty chair style. More like, all right, let's see what this punishment looks like in practice. Some time passed while I sat and thought about everything that had happened in my head. I took out my phone. No message. No, I arrived. No, I'm safe. Just silence. A silence that came with rules. Because Claire didn't just leave. She left with a concept. A lesson. The kind of lesson that only works if the other person plays their role. Broken. Remorseful. Begging. I didn't beg. Not because I was being tough. Because begging doesn't work with someone who's already decided they're right. I ate dinner alone. The food was actually good. I'd helped with it, which meant I now had to suffer my own cooking in solitude, like I was in some romantic tragedy, written by a man who owns exactly one black turtleneck. I tried to watch a Christmas movie. I picked one at random. It lasted 12 minutes before I shut it off, because it turns out watching happy fictional couples during a real-life holiday exile is the emotional equivalent of putting salt in your own eyes. So I did what any sane man does when his wife tells him to think about who he's become. I started thinking about who I've become, and I'll admit, at first, I did it the way she wanted. I replayed little moments from the past year. Times I forgot something small. Times I was tired. Times I came home late and didn't have the energy to be present. Times she'd asked, "Are you even excited?" And I'd said yes while answering an email. It was easy to feel guilty, because guilt is a well-trained dog. You whistle once, it sprints over with its tail between its legs. But then something else happened. The longer I sat with it, the more I realized the guilt didn't feel natural. It felt installed, like a software update I never agreed to. Because the truth was, I wasn't careless. I wasn't some incompetent man-child who needed his wife to teach him the meaning of Christmas through exile. I work, I pay bills, I handle the stuff most people don't even think about until it's broken. I'm the guy who fixes the leak, the guy who calls the mechanic, the guy who remembers the insurance renewal and the dentist appointment and we should probably replace the smoke detector batteries before we die. If anything, I've spent the last few years holding too much together. And the dessert? The dessert was one missing item on a list written by a woman who changes her mind 3 times and then acts like she told you the final version. I didn't say that out loud, of course, because Claire has a gift. She can turn a practical observation into a moral failing in under 5 seconds. Still, sitting alone in the blinking light of a judgmental Christmas tree gave me room to notice patterns I usually ignored. Like how she'd said, "You always change around Christmas?" She'd said it more than once, like it was a known fact, like I transform into a holiday monster when December hits. But I hadn't changed. The only thing that changed was her tolerance, her expectations, her tone, and her favorite new word, space. Space was her universal tool, her Swiss Army knife. A fight? Space. A question? Space. A disagreement? Space. A moment where I asked for clarity? Space. Space, apparently, was my responsibility to endure. And that thought didn't make me sad. It made me annoyed. I walked into the living room and stared at the presents under the tree. Some were from me to her. One was a small box I'd been genuinely excited about, something she'd hinted at for weeks. I sat on the rug and looked at it. A ridiculous thing to do, honestly. A grown man in a sweater, cross-legged, staring at wrapped cardboard like it might explain his marriage. Then I checked my phone again. Still nothing. I opened our message thread, scrolled up, and I saw it. A pattern. When she was upset, she didn't text less. She texted differently. Short, cold, precise. Like she was writing a corporate email. "I need space. Don't push me. You're proving my point." It was always the same shape, the same trap. Because if I responded emotionally, I was too much. If I didn't respond, I was cold. If I asked questions, I was not respecting her. The game was designed so the only winning move was silence. I didn't drink myself stupid, didn't rage, didn't call friends and scream. I cleaned up the dishes like a normal person, because I refused to be the guy who collapses into chaos just because someone left. Then I sat down with my laptop, not to stalk, not to spy, just to do what I always do when something feels off. I checked the timeline. Claire left at 8:43 p.m. I knew because I looked at the Ring camera alert. Front door motion. Not a secret. It's literally our system. The system I installed. "Taxi," she said. Her parents live 15 minutes away, so logically, she'd be there by 9:30. I waited. 10 p.m., no text. 11 p.m., nothing. Midnight, still nothing. At some point, I stopped waiting for a message and started waiting for my own brain to stop pretending this was normal. Because a wife who's resetting at her parents usually texts something, even minimal, even here, unless she didn't want to leave a trail. And I hated that my mind even went there. I hated that I had a brain that could generate suspicion like it was running a conspiracy podcast. So I shut the laptop, went upstairs, climbed into bed. Somewhere in the early hours of Christmas morning, my phone buzzed. Not her, her cousin. The text was short, cautious, like she was testing the ice. "Hey, random question. Did Claire tell you she stopped by?" My heartbeat didn't spike. It slowed. Because that's what happens when your brain hears the quiet click of a puzzle piece falling into place. I typed back, "Yes, she went to her parents." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Then finally, "She was here for a couple of hours." I stared at the screen, then typed, "A couple of hours?" There was a longer pause this time. Then, "I thought you knew." I didn't answer right away. Not because I was stunned, because I was suddenly very, very calm. The kind of calm you get when something you didn't want to believe starts becoming undeniably real. I replied, "She told me she was going to her parents. That's all." Another pause. Then the cousin wrote, "Oh, just that. One word. And somehow it said everything. Because that "oh" wasn't surprise. It was regret. It was the sound of someone realizing they just stepped into a mess they were told wasn't a mess." I typed, "Tell me what happened." And I waited. The reply didn't come immediately, which told me two things. First, she was choosing her words carefully. Second, whatever she was about to say wasn't something she wanted to say. I stared at the three dots like they were a heartbeat monitor. Then the message came. "She showed up around 9. The cousin kept typing. She was off, not upset exactly, just restless. Restless is a polite word. It's what you call a dog that keeps circling the room because it wants out, not comfort. She kept checking her phone, she continued, barely sat down. I leaned back against the headboard. Phone checking is one of Claire's tells. She doesn't do it when she's with family. She doesn't do it when she's present. She does it when she's waiting. Waiting for what? The cousin went on. She said she just needed to breathe for a minute. Went outside. Outside? In December? At night. She never came back, the cousin wrote. I read that line twice, then a third time. Not because I didn't understand, because my brain was doing that thing where it tries to soften impact by pretending it's just words. I typed slowly. Did she say where she was going? A pause. No, just that you knew. There it was. That neat little phrase. He knows. It's a beautiful lie. Technically true. Emotionally dishonest. I know she went to her parents. I didn't know she left. I didn't know she went somewhere else. I didn't know Christmas was apparently a multi-stop tour. The cousin added another message like she felt she owed me context. Her mom thought you two had talked it through. Of course she did. Claire doesn't just lie. She curates narratives. She makes sure everyone around her feels informed enough not to ask questions. I thanked the cousin. Not dramatically. Just, thanks for telling me. She replied with something vague about not wanting to cause problems. Too late. The problem had already rented space in my head and was unpacking. I put the phone down, and for a moment, I just stared at the wall. Not in shock, not in despair, in recognition. Because this wasn't some wild betrayal revelation. This was a pattern finally admitting its name. I got out of bed and went downstairs. The house looked different now. Not sad, exposed, like a stage after the actors leave and the props are still pretending to matter. I sat on the couch and started thinking backwards. Not emotionally, chronologically. Other holidays, other family visits, other times she needed space at very specific moments. Like last Thanksgiving, when she suddenly felt overwhelmed and stayed out late after dinner. Or the Easter thing, the one she framed as clearing her head. Or that time she said, "You know I don't do well when things feel forced," right before disappearing for an entire evening. At the time, I'd taken her at face value. Because trusting your spouse isn't naive, it's normal. What's not normal is when trust keeps requiring amnesia. I picked up my phone again and opened our chat, scrolled further back, and there they were. The lines, the ones I used to accept as emotional wisdom. You always change around Christmas. I need space when emotions run high. If you push, you'll only make it worse. Funny thing about those sentences, they sound reasonable. They sound like therapy language. But when you put them together, they form a perfect shield. Any attempt at closeness becomes pressure. Any question becomes intrusion. Any concern becomes proof that you're the problem. I laughed under my breath. Not because it was funny, because it was so clean, so well constructed. This wasn't chaos. This was choreography. I didn't feel angry yet. Anger comes later. Right now, I felt something better. Clarity. I wasn't abandoned because I forgot dessert. I was removed because I stopped fitting into a role. The role of the man who absorbs blame quietly. The role of the man who apologizes first and asks questions later. And suddenly, All the little contradictions I'd ignored started lining up like soldiers. Her sudden need for privacy, her phone always face down, her habit of stepping out to take a call that somehow lasted 40 minutes. I wasn't blind. I'd just been polite. There's a difference. I stood up and walked to the window. Snow was falling softly. Somewhere out there, my wife was resetting, just not where she said she would be. I checked the time again, almost 9 a.m. If she'd left her parents around 11, that left a wide, generous window of mystery. And I decided something right then. I wasn't going to confront her emotionally. I wasn't going to accuse. I wasn't going to play detective with a trench coat and paranoia, because people like Claire don't respond to explosions. They respond to precision. So I did what I do best. I gathered data. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Claire. "I need more time. Please don't start anything today." I stared at the message, then smiled, because it was perfect. She didn't ask how I was, didn't say she was okay, didn't say she made it to her parents. Just another instruction, another attempt to control the narrative. I typed back, "I'm not starting anything," which was true. I was finishing something. I put the phone down and waited. Waiting turned out to be easier than I expected. Not because I'm some enlightened monk who mastered inner peace over one ruined Christmas. Because once the picture forms, you don't need to stare at the pieces anymore. You already know what you're looking at. I made coffee, strong, black, the kind that doesn't pretend to be your friend. Sat at the kitchen table with the blinking lights still going, like they hadn't gotten the memo that the holiday mood was officially under review. I didn't feel the urge to confront her right away. That urge comes from insecurity, from fear of losing control. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel out of control. I felt ahead of it. I wasn't hunting for proof. I was confirming alignment. There's a difference. I opened our shared location history, not because I stalk her, because she insisted on it months ago, for safety. Claire left the house at 8:43 p.m. Her cousin said she arrived around 9. That tracks. She left her parents' place somewhere between 11 and midnight. That also tracks. The rest? A blank space. And blank spaces are only empty if you want them to be. I remembered something small, a detail so insignificant I dismissed it at the time. About a month ago, Claire had mentioned a friend from work who was going through a rough divorce. She said it casually, in passing, like weather. I remembered because she rarely talks about coworkers unless they're part of a story where she's the wise, emotionally evolved one. She'd said, "Some people just outgrow their marriages." At the time, I nodded and went back to my phone. Now that sentence felt curated. I didn't need to know who the guy was. I didn't need to see messages. I just needed to know whether Christmas had been an exception or a continuation. I checked past holidays, mentally. Christmas last year, a fight about emotional presence. New Year's, she wanted to go out with friends, came back late, said I'd made it awkward by asking when she'd be home. Valentine's Day, she said it was too commercial. Then somehow still spent half the evening texting. Every major moment had friction. Every moment of closeness had conditions. I leaned back and smiled. Not because it was funny, because it was consistent. People who are happy don't need exit strategies. They don't build emotional fire escapes. I looked at the presents again. Still untouched, still perfect. And I realized something else. She didn't take any gifts with her. Not for her parents, not for anyone. Which meant she didn't intend to stay long. She intended to pass through. Her message buzzed again. "Please respect my boundaries today." Boundaries, another beautiful word. It sounds like strength. But sometimes it's just a velvet rope around accountability. If you keep engaging, you keep the game alive. And I was done playing. Instead, I went for a walk. Snow under boots, cold air, real things. I thought about how easily I'd accepted the idea that I was failing simply because someone else declared it. When I got back, I called Claire. She picked up on the third ring. "Why are you calling?" she asked immediately. "No hello." I just wanted to check something, I said. A pause. You said you were at your parents', I continued, tone neutral. Your cousin said you left after 2 hours. Silence, not denial, not confusion. Then a sharp exhale. Why are you talking to my cousin? She snapped. There it was, the pivot. Never answer the question, question the questioner. I didn't go looking for her, I said calmly. She messaged me. That's not the point. It actually is, I replied. You told me you were at your parents'. You didn't tell me you left. Another pause, longer this time. She didn't deny it. She went straight to anger. You're invading my space, she said. This is exactly why I needed distance from you. I almost laughed. Almost, because it was textbook. Discover the truth? You're controlling? Ask a question? You're unsafe? Notice a gap? You're disrespectful. I'm not invading anything, I said. I'm just clarifying. You don't trust me, she shot back. I trusted what you said, I replied. Now I'm noticing what you didn't. She was quiet. Then she did what she always does when logic fails. She reframed. You're proving my point, she said. You always do this when emotions are high. I let the silence sit. Not to punish her, to let her hear herself. Finally, I spoke. You didn't leave because I forgot dessert. That got her attention. You left because you wanted to, I continued, and Christmas was convenient. Her voice hardened. You're twisting things. No, I said. I'm simplifying them. Another pause. Then the line, the last attempt. This is exactly why I needed space from you. There it was. The final inversion, as if discovering the truth was the offense. I didn't argue, didn't defend myself, didn't ask where she went, because at that point the details didn't matter. What mattered was the realization. She didn't want accountability. She wanted permission. I ended the call, not angrily, just finished. I sat there for a moment. Then I stood up and started turning off the Christmas lights, one by one, because I didn't need them on anymore. A couple of hours passed after the call. No messages, no apologies, no explanations, which told me exactly what was happening. She wasn't processing her feelings. She wasn't taking space. She was recalculating. That's the thing about people who live off narrative control. The moment they sense the story slipping out of their hands, they don't disappear. They come back. I was sitting in the living room when I heard the lock turn. Not slowly, not carefully, confident. The sound of someone entering a space they still believe belongs to them. Claire walked in like she'd just stepped out to grab coffee and come back 5 minutes later. Coat off, keys on the table, shoes kicked aside, no hesitation, no guilt, just a controlled inhale and a face already set to reasonable. Hey, she said, softer than before. We need to talk. I didn't stand up, didn't rush, didn't ask where she'd been. That alone made her pause. I didn't expect you back so soon, I said. She shrugged, like this was all very normal. I realized we shouldn't leave things hanging, she replied. This whole situation got blown out of proportion. There it was. Shrink the timeline, minimize the damage. Turn a calculated disappearance into an emotional misunderstanding. She sat down across from me, folding her hands like she was about to lead a mediation session. I think we both said things we didn't mean, she continued. Christmas is stressful. Emotions run high. I nodded slowly. Interesting, I said. Because you seemed very sure of what you meant when you left. Her jaw tightened, just slightly. That's not fair, she said. I needed space. From me, I replied. She sighed, already annoyed. You're doing it again. Doing what? Turning everything into an interrogation. I smiled. No, I said calmly. This isn't an interrogation. This is the part where I stop pretending I don't notice patterns. She leaned back, crossing her arms. You talked to my cousin. Not a question. A realization. She talked to me, I corrected. There's a difference. Her lips pressed together. So now you're collecting opinions? She said sharply. No, I replied. Just timelines. Silence stretched between us. I didn't fill it. That was new. Finally, she spoke. You're reading too much into this, she said. I went to my parents. I needed air. That's it. And after? I asked. She looked away. Just long enough. Why does it matter where I went? She snapped. This is exactly why I needed distance. You always push when I ask for space. There it was again. The shield. The emotional riot gear. I leaned forward slightly. No, I said. This is why you needed a reason. Her eyes narrowed. A reason for what? For leaving without answering questions, I said. For starting fights over small things. For turning every conversation into my failure. She laughed, short, sharp. So now forgetting dessert is small? It always was, I replied. That's the point. Her expression shifted. Not anger, calculation. You're twisting things, she said. You always do this when you feel cornered. I shook my head. I'm not cornered, I said. I'm done playing defense. That landed. She sat up straighter. What are you implying? I exhaled slowly. I'm saying the fights weren't the problem, I said. They were the cover. She scoffed. Oh, please. You didn't start pulling away because I changed, I continued evenly. You started pulling away because you needed exits that made you look justified. Her voice rose. That's not true. Then answer this, I said. Why does every time you want space line up perfectly with holidays, trips, or moments that require commitment? She opened her mouth, closed it, then pivoted. You're being paranoid. No, I said. I'm being observant. She stood up. So what, you think I planned all of this? I think you planned enough, I replied. And let me take the blame for the rest. Her tone hardened. I didn't cheat on you. I looked at her, carefully. I didn't ask, I said. That stopped her, because that wasn't the defense she'd prepared. What I'm saying, I continued, is that even if nothing happened, everything around it already did. She stared at me. You're blowing this up. No, I said. I'm finally seeing it at scale. I stood up. She watched me, confused now. Where are you going? She asked. To pack. She laughed nervously. Don't be dramatic. This isn't drama, I said. It's clarity. She followed me into the bedroom. You're really going to walk away because of a misunderstanding? I picked up a bag. This wasn't a misunderstanding, I replied. This was a system. I folded clothes calmly. No shaking hands. No rush. You didn't leave because I forgot something, I said quietly. You left because you wanted a life where I wasn't inconvenient. Her voice dropped. You're making a huge mistake. I zipped the bag. Maybe, I said, but it won't be someone else's decision anymore. I walked past her toward the door. She didn't stop me. She didn't apologize. She didn't confess. Because at that point, none of that would have mattered. As I stepped out, I turned back once. Christmas wasn't ruined, I said. It just exposed the truth. I closed the door behind me. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was leaving something behind. I felt like I was finally stepping out of a story that was never written for me to win. Life didn't explode after I left. That surprised me. No dramatic collapse, no late-night calls, no emotional chaos begging me to reconsider, just distance. And distance has a way of letting the truth stretch its legs. A few weeks later, her cousin reached out again. Not immediately, not eagerly. More like someone checking whether enough time had passed for honesty to stop feeling dangerous. We met for coffee. Neutral ground, no sides. She didn't sugarcoat it. Claire didn't take time to work on herself. She moved in with him. Not right away, of course not. That would have looked bad. But soon enough. Apparently, he'd been around longer than I thought. Not one mistake, not one slip. A pattern, holidays, trips, space. All those clean exits had destinations. The cousin said it quietly, almost apologetically, like she was telling me about bad weather. They're together now, she said. She says it's serious. I nodded. It didn't hurt the way people expect these things to hurt. Because by the time the truth arrives officially, you've usually already met it informally. In small moments, in tone shifts, in absences that last just a little too long. What did sting, briefly, was the confirmation. Not that she cheated, but that she'd been so committed to making me feel like the villain while she was doing it. I thanked the cousin. Sincerely. Not everyone chooses honesty when it costs them comfort. As for me, I stayed busy. Moved into a smaller place, cleaner, quieter. No emotional landmines hidden in normal conversations. And a few days before Christmas, almost exactly a year later, I found myself back in a grocery store. Same town, different mindset. I stood in front of the dessert section longer than necessary. Cheesecakes lined up like they were mocking me. I laughed out loud. "Don't overthink it," a voice beside me said. I turned. She was holding a basket, not a cart, no strategic list taped to her phone. She smiled. A real one. No agenda. "Cheesecake trauma?" she asked. "Something like that?" We talked for 5 minutes, then 10. Nothing dramatic, no sparks flying like a movie trailer, just easy conversation, the kind that doesn't feel like a test. I bought the cheesecake. She bought tiramisu. Ironically, neither of us even wanted dessert that badly. We exchanged numbers, not because it felt fated, because it felt simple. Later that night, sitting alone in my quiet apartment, I realized something. The dessert had never been the problem. It was never about forgetting something. It was about being with someone who needed a reason to leave, and someone else who didn't. Claire got her story. A new man, a clean transition, a narrative where she was finally choosing herself. I got something better, peace, and a cheesecake I didn't have to apologize for buying wrong. Funny how life works like that. Sometimes you forget the dessert, and it costs you a marriage. Other times, you remember it, and it reminds you that losing the wrong person was the first right decision you made. If you felt this story hit hard, drop a like, subscribe for more, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support keeps Steelheart beating.